Welcome back. Thank you for staying with KTN Prime. In studio, I'm joined by Fanyamambo Kinuthia, Dismas Bukua, and Maliba Arnold as we continue taking a look at the latest developments that are playing out politically. And just briefly, for your comment, Kinuthia, I had Rigathi Gachagua mention that perhaps he'll try and force a mini general election, that those who are allied to him, especially from the Mount Kenya region, are just waiting for him to launch his party. He mentioned it'll be launched in May this year, and then they will resign. And it's a little bit unheard of because it's so random for members of parliament who are enjoying the trappings of power to actually resign in order to go for a by-election to be in a favorable side. How does this play out, or is it simply political posturing?
First and foremost, before they even resign, there are people whose signatures are ready. In fact, it is sad that we don't have IEBC. There are constituencies that we've already done all the homework and we are ready to recall those members of parliament. If they give us IEBC tomorrow, we shall be moving to the next step of seeing to it that those constituencies are declared vacant, and we hold a by-election and we make sure that we show this government where the people are and what these people want. And that's why they've delayed IEBC for this long. So even without those people resigning, and the people know, even the head of state is aware that Kenyans are not where he is, and he's not where Kenyans are. So that's not a big one. I think for us, from where we sit, it's a question of ni vile tu huwezi kimbiza clock ifike 2027. But from where we sit, this thing it's done, it's dusted, it's clean. It's a question of let us put the right people in place. But the most important thing that we are looking at now is, for the first time, the president is going to be faced by something he was not prepared for: a united opposition. And why is the opposition united? Because even Kenyans are telling them, mukikuja kumi mutatuona. Like today, they had to give Mother Karua a very huge task. She was told, you are like a mother figure. Be the one who will be calling us to order. Be the one who will be uniting us. And so from today on, all those parties that you saw represented there, whenever each of them has got something, we shall all go. And we shall all stand there. And we shall all say, eventually our presidential candidate will be one. Na wale wanafikiria mutapewa pesa musimame mugawanye kura, be very careful, because Kenyans are looking at you. The Kenyans who have whipped us into coming together will whip you into stepping down.
So, Maliba, briefly, is President William Ruto trying to perhaps right his wrongs in terms of central Kenya slipping away from his grasp? How does he add on to what has been negated by Rigathi Gachagua and the movement in the mountain? People are talking about Northeastern. That's why he's working towards Western and Nyanza. How does he play his cards?
I don't think the president is very keen on righting any wrongs. Immediately, of course, after the Gen Z demonstrations, the president and his team got into regime survival. And in that mode, they've been there for a very long time. Structurally, you will realize that the president's government, or rather the administration, now as it is only bulwarked on two things. Number one, the National Assembly. That is the bulwark upon which this government really lies. And then now Raila Odinga as the other now center pole that he's actually working around. Because if you were to look at the executive is rickety. It's not even anything that is functional. You don't see PSS. You will meet people from your village who are more popular and visible. People can actually tell them apart from PSS, for example. The cabinet nowadays, I saw Sifuna the other day saying in the Senate that he doesn't know if the cabinet secretary for water is a man or a woman. So if it's the executive is not working. Well, before we talk about Mount Kenya and the others. So only Parliament has actually been holding William Ruto's administration in place. And in Parliament you have got Moses Wetangula, a very cunning and clever lawyer who's actually worked around Parliament to ensure that the government's agenda goes through. If Parliament wasn't there, if they had anybody weaker, William Ruto would not be in government today, because they already told people that you can actually impeach the presidency, a very dangerous precedent when they did away with Rigathi Gachagua. The other person who's also very important in the National Assembly is the leader of majority. Those two are actually the pillars that people don't talk about. Knowing too well that the president, because the judiciary is very belligerent, pushing and assailing the administration of the day. His own executive has got a revolving door syndrome. Therefore, you cannot even count on that. There are people who come to the cabinet for 4 months and they exit even before the public know about them. So you talk about the plan. Either there is no plan or they don't know how to actually implement the plan.
Okay.
Because if you change the team midway and the strategy, you insist the strategy is the same, probably there was no plan in the first place. So now when you talk about what if he's righting any wrongs, no, he is in regime survival, or rather regime survival mode. He's not living that. That is why he's actually tagging Raila everywhere, so that Raila becomes the other pillar to actually help him actually work around. So he's not changing anything. Look at this. If it was about anything that is wise on their side, you will talk about them not trying to assail Mount Kenya more, because the president still has got some level of support in Mount Kenya. So when you see attempts at Martha Koome, fair enough, people are going to argue legally and professionally and say that as a judge, she doesn't belong to any tribe and whatever. But there's reality, there's real politics. So people will look at it as an attack on Mount Kenya when you target Koome. When you try to target the majority leader like Ichung'wah, like they have actually been trying to do, they've been trying to actually do away with Kimani Ichung'wah. That in and of itself speaks of people who are not really ready to remedy anything from Mount Kenya. And finally, let's talk about Ndindi Nyoro. Ndindi Nyoro, for example, he is now just the budget chair in name, because the real function has actually been taken away from him and taken to the liaison committee. So there is no stopping in making, or rather getting it wrong. So there is nothing they are really writing. You will remember in the State of the Nation address last year, the president said that they had learned that listening to the people is a full-time job. He's the same guy who the other day told us that if you do not have a PhD, you shouldn't tell him anything. So that is not any guy who's interested in righting any wrong. He is not. And he doesn't appear. He's in regime survival mode, and he thinks that his only savior now is Raila Odinga. He'll give Raila whatever he wants. And then, of course, on the other side, Parliament. So with those two, he hopes to survive until he goes to an election. I don't think he plans to even deliver.
Okay, Dismas, as you come in, because he's definitely mentioned the judiciary and the target on Chief Justice Martha Koome's back, including the other Supreme Court judges. Just to bring our viewers up to speed, the Supreme Court judges led by Chief Justice Martha Koome sort of heaved a sigh of relief after JSC halted the process of removing them from office as proposed by, is it about 3 Kenyans? I'd like your take on this particular issue, because the decision, whichever way it goes, is about to set precedent, setting a legal fight between the Chief Justice Martha Koome-led 7-judge bench and the Judicial Service Commission. Rigathi Gachagua seems to think that the president has hold of the Judiciary Service Commission. The numbers rather favor him. What's your take on the process of removing a judge from office? Can it be stopped? And perhaps some of the other issues that the High Court will be determining is whether JSC can entertain an omnibus complaint against the entire 7-judge bench.
Yes, before we speak to the Judicial Service Commission, the party leaders raised fundamental issues. The Kenya Kwanza administration, you've got a number of principal secretaries who do not speak for their state departments. I would challenge you, if you ask a normal Kenyan to name for you 10 principal secretaries, they will sweat. They don't know what the principal secretaries are in Kenya. So you wonder, you are the head of state departments, and you don't pronounce yourself on those state department issues. That is why when there's a crisis anywhere in Kenya, if it's in education, if it's in healthcare, if it's in finance, it's actually the president who speaks about it. We've got a cabinet secretary responsible for health in Kenya called Deborah Baraza. Times above number, she has demonstrated that she doesn't understand the docket. As late as yesterday when she went to the Senate, she doesn't understand about these healthcare reforms. And she's the cabinet secretary. And when Senator Cheriot pointed out, the 2 principal secretaries started smiling sheepishly. So you wonder, what is the role of those 2 principal secretaries? You've got a cabinet secretary in charge of education who doesn't understand the education funding model. So wherever there's a crisis, it's the president who is doing a town hall. So you begin to wonder, what are these people doing in office? If you are a cabinet secretary, you are a principal secretary, and you don't understand your docket.
Well, there could be a reshuffle coming soon, yeah?
No, but you know, a reshuffle...
It's not changing the facts.
No, Maniba, calm down. A reshuffle will not help. Now, let's go to the Judicial Service Commission.
Okay.
I'm not a lawyer, but I've got capacity and competence to understand these terminologies. When you go through those documents, you actually begin to wonder whether the Judicial Service Commission is a special purpose vehicle or whether they're working for Kenya's interest. For instance, in the matter, an issue raised by Ken Nyaundi, representing Justice Lenaola, they're accusing Justice Lenaola of taking a decision of a bench that he was not part of. So his colleagues in the Supreme Court took a decision, but he's not a member of that bench. And the Judicial Service Commission, with alacrity, they've gone to the top of Mount Kenya and told Justice Lenaola, please come and explain this. But he was not a member of that bench. So it's not hard for a rational human being to come to the conclusion that now the Judicial Service Commission is actually acting like a conveyor belt. So you take any petition, they stamp received, then they look for the judge. One expects the Judicial Service Commission, and I know Fanyamambo is a lawyer, he'll give us more details, to look at every petition keenly with a microscope. But when you see that Justice Lenaola has been accused, and then you say, you tell him you've been given time to respond, and his lawyer has indicated that there's going to be a preliminary objection. Now, as a rational Kenyan, in the face of it, you can actually establish that the Judicial Service Commission probably has got some vendetta, that they've got scores to settle. And you remember early on I indicated, the person who is going to influence, among the three people to influence the outcome of the general election is Rigathi Gachagua. Now, Rigathi Gachagua has managed to introduce politics into a judicial process. So whether or not there is a merit in removing Justice Koome from office, everybody now is going to take home Rigathi's propaganda.
Okay.
Because judges in Kenya are not appointed on the basis that you come from Mount Kenya, although they're supposed to be the face of Kenya, you know, Chapter 10, Article 6, all these are considerations. But Rigathi Gachagua goes to the top of Mount Kenya, literally, in Meru, and says that if she's out of office, they don't stay here. So I'm wondering, who gives Rigathi Gachagua capacity to tell the head of state, or indeed tell another Kenyan, that there's a place in Kenya where you cannot visit. And that is why I indicated earlier on that if there's anybody who will give Ruto sleepless nights, it's going to be Rigathi Gachagua.
So Fanyamambo, as you come in, the legalese is playing out, but people are arguing that there's a hidden hand, a hidden political hand. To what end? What exactly is the goal here?
I'll tell you very simply. What is the role of the Supreme Court? Number one is to interpret the law. Number two, it is to decide on a presidential petition. So this regime is very clever because nobody else can give a decision on the presidential election apart from the Supreme Court. So what do they want to do? It's to remove them. And when they remove them, make sure that there is a horrendous election. And then they declare themselves and there is no court to hear. That's the whole idea. The idea is not to remove Mother Koome and replace her with competent people. No, we are not foolish. The idea is to remove Mother Koome and then come up with court cases and all sorts of funny stories and wait for 2027. And then after 2027, there is no bench to decide. So once IEBC wakes up and declares, an IEBC that they want to form in Mombasa, because actually what they are doing now, I've seen 1,048 people who've applied to be IEBC commission chairman, and I'm looking at them, and I have mercy on them because that's a predetermined position. There's no way somebody like William Ruto will wake up and get a surprise and, hey, when do you make an interview? Oh my God, now we are going to make you chairman. There's no way. These are predetermined things. They already have the IEBC in place. So the whole idea is to make sure that there is no Supreme Court, there is no bench to sit, and there is no bench to decide on whether things are right or wrong when they go and actually do the wrong things that they intend to do. That's why we are saying having the court as it is right now, it is not a perfect judiciary, I must admit. But having it is better than not having one. We do not want a Haiti kind of situation. I think they've been benchmarking in Haiti, and they're saying, oh, to run an anarchy state is one, you don't need a judiciary, so get rid of this. You need to tell people you're building. You know, they're taking a lot of notes from Haiti. And that's why I said we shouldn't have gone to Haiti, because we are borrowing all the wrong things from that place.
Okay, Maliba, as you come in.
But one second. There's something that's going on that tells you President William Ruto is actually not ready for 2028 as president.
Briefly.
Have you seen the Assumption of Office bill? Another recommendation is that the head of state does not have to be there to give the sword. What is it telling you? He's prepared that he doesn't want to find himself at Kasarani or wherever it is handing over power because he knows it's going. And when you see it has gone through cabinet and now it's going to parliament, unajua alika kwa hiyo cabinet. Wakasema tupitishe hii ya kusema si lazima nipeane njora. It tells you something.
Well, that's your interpretation, definitely. Maliba, how best to deal with corruption and bribery in the apex court and the judiciary? Because that's a sore issue. We have to realize that we're dealing with perhaps a corrupt judiciary.
Just allow me to, in a second, to actually just speak to this. I do not think that the changes that are being pursued at the Supreme Court have got anything to do with the 2027. I think that the reason why there is this concerted push against the Supreme Court has got everything to do with the Rigathi Gachagua. I am not his supporter, but there are all indications that the courts are likely to actually overturn his impeachment. That is the primary reason why there should be any push to ensure, and you can actually see like what happened in Narok and the precedents that have actually been set recently. So 2027 is actually secondarily, because ordinarily we've already gone to the Supreme Court for elections a lot of times, and there are precedents that you cannot run away from. But I think that if there is any reason why anyone would want to alter with the apex court, it has got to do with a real problem, giving somebody probably legitimacy that he didn't have and giving him a lot of impetus. Now, talking about corruption, I don't think that the problem of corruption really is just about a judiciary problem. It is societal. Because when we talk about corruption, we are always looking at one side. Of course, it takes two to tango. People don't want to talk about that. But there is always the person who issues the bribe. That also we need to talk about. But I do not think that it is wise to talk about corruption in the judiciary as it were at the moment. Because if you look at corruption today in this administration, it's systemic. It permeates every level of government. And therefore, if you target judiciary alone, it feels like mbona sisi peke yetu.
It's a drop in the ocean. I get you. Okay, gentlemen, unfortunately, that's all the time we had. And we'll definitely make date, or save a date next time to ensure we get to articulate more issues. It's always a pleasure having you with us. I was joined by Fanyamambo Kinuthia, a lawyer, Dismas Mukua, Dismas Mukua is a political risk analyst and public policy analyst, Maliba Arnold. My name is Jesse Rogers. Our sign language interpreter was Meresha Owiti. And on behalf of the team in Ashley, Missouri, we say good night and good evening. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.